And the final thing I will say about the business buying thing is it is my dream, it is my vision, it would be my magnum opus if we as a 10K Project Collective could organize ourselves and target certain businesses, certain industries, certain supply chains, and buy a supply chain in agriculture, buy a supply chain in manufacturing, buy a supply chain in the metaverse, right? Um, the part of the reason that we don't have wealth is because we don't own the supply chains. We have too much consumerism, or if we're buying things, we're only buying a part of it instead of the entire ecosystem. So I'm gonna put that out there. I can't lead it myself. Tawana won't let me lead anything else. So somebody else gonna have to take that on. But
I will tell you, Cherie has been known for giving really great advice. So when Cherie says somebody should do it, I do think you guys should listen. She is not allowed to do it, but I think you guys should listen. She's a really, really great, innovative thinker. And so she really has a great way of thinking about things in the future that can be profitable. So when she speaks, you should really listen.
Please, somebody, please take that on. Okay, let's talk about the topic of the day. Super excited about this topic. So we hear all the time about the different types of new technology that is coming out. Many of you have heard that Facebook has officially changed its name to Meta. And then they spent like $250 billion, was it, Talisha, over the past quarter or something like that, some ridiculous amount of money. And Mark Zuckerberg.
And let's not confuse, just because you call yourself something doesn't make you it. Because I called myself Shaka Khan when I was 7, and I made everybody in my house call me Shaka Khan. It does not make me Shaka Khan, y'all. So just put that out there.
Yes.
That's such a good point, because I heard someone the other day talk about the metaverse and only talked about Facebook. I said that they just changed their name to Meta. They are not the metaverse. Yeah.
Right. They are not. They are still
That's why
Facebook.
we have to educate. We have to have this conversation tonight because people
not
are confused.
Go by what you call it, because like I said, y'all are called a whole lot of things, but doesn't make you that, because I would be called Beyonce right now, but that's not happening either. So
you gonna whip your hair? You gonna whip your hair?
I would grow some. If you call it to me, I would grow some hair.
So I wanted to divide tonight into like the 3 different silos, I'm going to call them. The first is going to be NFTs and what's happening with NFTs. I have an article to share from Yahoo. Talisha is a dynamo with the blockchain, which is the underlying portion of NFTs and crypto and things like that. And then the second part, we're going to talk about AI. And I know Ann knows about crypto and NFTs as well. So like we'll have a conversation. Then we're going to talk about AI and have another article to show. And we'll talk about, you know, what's happening within that. And then we're going to talk about the metaverse and what's happening with that as well. And then the fourth part of tonight will be just some ideas of ways that you can invest in these things. So with that, I wanted to start off with Talisha, my girl here. I'm going to read a couple of things from this article and then have you introduce yourself and talk about NFTs and the crypto revolution. So this is from Yahoo Finance, why Black Americans are leading the NFT and crypto revolution. So Web3 is what it's called, is a vision of the internet built on the blockchain, which is all about something called decentralized finance. And Talisha is going to talk about this. But there was a section in here that I was so proud of my people. Here it is, here. In many ways, Black Americans like Buchanan are leading the crypto revolution. 23% of African Americans own cryptocurrency compared to 11% of white Americans and 17% of Hispanics, according to 2 recent surveys conducted by the Harris Poll and provided to USA Today. Minority communities who have historically been left out of growing industries like alcohol, marijuana, and more are eager to be a part of this latest shift. So with that, I'm going to bring up Talisha to talk about NFTs, crypto. I'm very proud of my people for getting in to cryptocurrency early, but I'm gonna toss it over to you, Talisha. Tell everybody, first of all, who you are, then tell us what these things mean, give us the 411.
I am Talisha Shine, so all of you know me in some form or shape. I am one of the founding members of the 10K Project, also a founding member of Black Blockchain Consultants. So here in this space, we have a lot of these terms. I think that's where we're going to even talk about, because I think people throw these terms around all the time of like, what are we talking about? So what are NFTs? What is the metaverse? What is Web3? What is all that kind of stuff? And it's really important, I think, just because for clarity purposes, to know what you're talking about so that you understand what people think they're talking about is not really what they're talking about. So as we go into this space, and I know there's a question by Ms. Beulah, what that metaverse is. And so we're going to talk about it, but I always say like, we're going to talk about Web3, and people always kind of move through those terminologies. And I always say like Web3 is truly blockchain. And that's the impetus, that's the infrastructure that we're talking about all the time. But Web 3.0 is something very different. And I know that seems like a really little kind of minute kind of thing, but it makes the difference, because what we're talking about are things coming together. And in this is technology. So just like we'd say you use your computer, but you need a monitor. This is kind of the thing. We have bits and pieces that are coming together here. And Web 3.0 is the interface. That's what we're looking at. And I always say, like, when you go to your computer, we had Internet 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 is how we're delivering that. So this is where all these technologies come in, AR, VR, mixed reality. That's where you're getting the data information from. Then we have that secondary layer, which is the logic. And that's where that AI portion comes in. It's going to take that data and do something with it. That data is going to reside on the blockchain. So that's where that Web3 comes up. But you have all these different layers. And in that, when you're traversing all of these layers, you need protection of the asset that your class is going to actually maneuver through. So that's where the NFT comes in. It's the portability unit that you can take this data, because now it's an asset. It's not just stuff that you kind of carry around with you. We've been trained in the Web 2.0 kind of presents just to click a box and give all your stuff away. Well, now you got to carry your stuff with you, because now it's valuable, it's monetizable. And so that's what the NFT allows us to do. And even though it's called something that it's not, that it's being described as a non-fungible token, which you never want to describe something as what it's not, it's really just the ability to have a unique digital asset that contains the information, both from a physical asset that you're carrying into whatever realm that you want to. So you can take your house into the metaverse if you really want to, or you can take those privileges and information, your artwork, whatever you want, into that space. And how you would do that is through an NFT.
Ann, did you want to add something to that? And I also want to let people know in YouTube, I can see you, and on Facebook, I can see you as well. So if you all have questions, definitely put them in the chat, and people in Zoom, put them in the Q&A. But Ann, introduce yourself, and you can add anything to the conversation.
Yeah, so hi, everyone. I'm Ann Griffin. I'm a bit of a product manager, startup advisor. I work a bit in blockchain and AI, but just tech overall. I originally studied engineering, worked in tech for over 12 years. And, I think so I've worked also a little bit in like startups within the blockchain space, as well as advising startups both in blockchain, non-blockchain, as well as AI. To be honest, Talisha gave like an amazing like overview. I feel like anything I added here, unless someone has like a specific add-on question to that, like I think I will let like perfection sit as as is,
Well, so then let's start off with some of the questions with regards to this whole thing. When we were doing Black Blockchain Consultants, we always talked about the use cases, because we always said that not only our people, but just the public in general would really experience these things through the use cases. I'm curious, I'll toss it over to both of you. What are some of the use cases that you see now that maybe we should take a closer look at? And then what are some of the use cases that you see 10 years from now that will be a little bit more prevalent as well?
Go ahead, Ann. Take this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. So the use cases are really interesting because there are a lot out there, especially now that I wouldn't say it's in a mature phase, but it's more mature than it was even like 2 to 3 years ago. One of the very interesting use cases is a lot of people in healthcare are trying to use blockchain more, especially around logistics, because you have a lot of kind of highly valuable materials, especially when you start talking about pharmaceuticals, but also non-pharmaceuticals that hospitals, health systems like need to transport. And they want to be able to kind of say like, oh, yes, this thing did start in this location. And we have like this immutable record saying it did start here. And we want to be able to know, hey, this was transported under these conditions, and have like things monitoring it and say like, hey, we know that this sensor never went above this temperature while it was being shipped. And we know that it stopped in these places, that you can use from like a lot of different kind of inputs, and that, based on, these records, things went where people claim that they went. It was really interesting. So people are using that more in healthcare now. But we started seeing this a little bit a few years ago when IBM started putting Walmart on the blockchain. And they found that the hard part was not actually getting their suppliers onto the blockchain to get the shampoo into the Walmart. The problem was actually a lot of these suppliers actually had no idea how their shampoo got onto the shelves of Walmart. They like let it leave the manufacturing facility, and there was like no record. And so a lot of them was like actually figuring out like, how does this work? And then integrating the technology so that you could actually track it. And I think one of the other things I'm seeing more of that's really interesting is, so I know there's a lot of talk about NFTs. There's a lot of hype around them. There are a lot of businesses that are now building utility into NFTs. There's businesses that are trying to say, hey, what if your concert ticket was an NFT? So not only do you use it as the ticket, you also have this like memento. And then like, maybe if you went to that concert, this now opens up the ability to buy other NFTs, or makes it so you're available to join, like you have an NFT ticket to a Beyonce concert. Maybe now that also gets you an early access to the next Ivy Park drop or something. There's a lot of businesses that are building this into like entertainment and sports, where it's not just here is the art, but here is the utility that comes with this NFT. So those are some of the use cases I'm seeing a lot more of.
Yeah,
I mean, even Gary
Vee. That's my healthcare is obviously my NFT collection is all about that utility and bringing telehealth to the metaverse. So it spans all of that. But yes, and we can see from Gary Vee having a loyalty report. We always talked about this. If you were ever see our BBC episodes, we talk about how what I consider the non-sexy, the practical and pragmatic uses. Arts and entertainment are really good because people can wrap their head about a collectible. But when you take it into just like a bus ticket, a loyalty program to get your gas or your groceries, that doesn't seem so important. But think of how many times you do that per day and how that information is being transferred. What do you want to do with it? Do you always use your gas points before they, expire? No. So this is a way that you can use these types of utility. And I always think like tokenization is a core pillar of blockchain technology. It is the oldest use case. It is the thing of why you use it and how you use it. So the NFT is truly nothing new. It's just how it's adopted and how we're talking about it. And I think that, like I said, the arts and entertainment make it really hot and heavy, but that is just a slice, like a real small bit of what it really is capable of, because utility is embedded into it. It's not just a JPEG. There is no such thing. If you want the art has a smart contract automatically tied to it that gives you royalty, that gives you track and traceability. That's what it's supposed to do, because that's the impetus of an NFT, is to show you ownership, authentication, and provenance over whatever digital asset is attached to it. So that's what you're kind of looking at. And I love Gary Vee's, even though it's extraordinarily expensive. But what that NFT gives you is access to things that you would never have, to certain chefs, to special days, to being able to be, have these meetups with him and protect this community that you've created around this. All of those things come with holding that NFT. So that's what you're always looking for, that utility. But what does it mean to you? Because it's going to be something that you need to actually utilize in some capacity, not just to hold it. Even if it is the artwork can now go from the digital aspect of being in your household in a frame to actually being stored in your metaverse home, and you can display it there. So there's going to be a whole lot that we can do with it. But I know we get caught up. Everybody's always like, it's just the art. It's just the art. That's a very small and limited use case where you'll see the practicality in 5 to 10 years really just go beyond what you're thinking, things that you do automatically every day, but it'll just be in that form. So it shouldn't be overwhelming to you in the sense, because it's something that you would already have some familiarity with. It's just the how now has changed a little bit. Now you'll have your NFT wallet to kind of show that, yes, I own this. This is my driver's license. This is what I do. This is my credentials for my going to school. Yes, I can have this. I own this home here. This is my airborne ticket. All of those things are going to come, and you're just going to swipe like you're used to now, but it's just going to be a little different.
Can we talk about the how a little bit more? Nick touches on this in her question. How do we buy NFTs? And more importantly, how do we create NFTs, right? Because the investment in an NFT comes two ways, right? We can be the creator of one, or we can be an investor in one. And so can we talk a little bit about how do I create one? Let's talk about that first. How does an NFT become an NFT?
Again, you can create it. You can create value out of, this is where the simplest aspect of creating a piece of art. You can do that and digitize that and then put it on a marketplace. And that's how it becomes. So there is a process with it, because you're just not uploading a file. There is some metadata that's attached to it, and that smart contract, again, to show that this is the unique digital asset that it is. So you can create something of value, something that you built. And we've done that even with artists that we've seen. We're creating actual physical pieces of art. Then they digitize them. And what they do is now they sell that physical piece of art, and the NFT is now just a nice value add. It's to show the authenticity. So it's almost like giving them the certificate of authenticity for this physical piece. And we have other artists that are truly just digital in nature, kind of doing that as well. So it depends. But now, again, if you want to be a pragmatic NFT, it's a contract. So if I want to do some contractual work, like we talk about business buying, what if I want my contract of that I'm buying this business to be an NFT? So I can say the property rights are in there, the land ownership, how I want my electricity, all of those things can now be held into that NFT contract. And then again, I can mint that, which is the process by what is writing to the blockchain. And then I can have electronic signatures. And at that point, now I have an NFT that's my contractual agreement for the business that I bought. So anytime there's different people sell it or whatever, and I have in there, I want residual, I want 10% every time they make a sale, that can be embedded in there. And that smart contract will hold all of that information and all the subsequent transactions that occur.
Yeah. And looks like Cherie just put a resource in the chat as well.
That's good for art, yes. So, but there are other ways of minting across the board. But if you have artwork that you're creating, there are many different NFT platforms and marketplaces that allow you to make that and mint that to the actual blockchain that they're using.
Yeah, so as my understanding is OpenSea is one of the largest ones, but there are other places where you can go and develop your NFT. The other thing when I was going to mention Gary Vaynerchuk is because he has Vayner NFT now. And I actually listened to, I think they were on the Bankless podcast. I listened to his new vice president or whomever of Vayner NFT. There are a lot of companies now that are having consulting arms just to help people set up in their own NFTs and their own NFT communities and benefits and things like that. So when we start talking about how to invest, again, we don't want you to just be a consumer, or just to invest in the JPEG, as Alicia is like saying that that's not really what you do, but also to think about how do you invest in yourself and your knowledge and your ability to make money as a consultant, or, other ways, or even to set up a white label platform for helping other people set up their own NFTs as well. So, Anne, I'm going to toss it to you.
Yeah. So just like specifically, and Talisha did a great job explaining that, there's different types of NFTs and like how you mint them is going to be different, what that process looks like. Specifically in this scenario of art, if you were going to use a platform like OpenSea, they still have a ways to go to make things a little more user-friendly, but it does feel like a lot of these things where we're talking about smart contracts and that sort of thing, they try to, I think, make it so even if you don't really understand a lot about smart contracts, you can at least figure out like how to mint NFT. You do on their specific platform, and again, which is specifically for art, you do upload like an image. There's a bunch of metadata you have to fill out. And then if you decide you actually want to go through the process of like minting, which is like making sure that like, you know, this whole thing gets like actually created and is like the smart contract is tied now to your, again, this is specific art NFT. There is usually a fee associated with that if you want to take it off of OpenSea. So it feels like very much like, hey, I'm uploading a photo, but there's a lot of things going on in the background behind it. But that's again specifically for art NFT. And there's certain things that you can kind of, when you enter the metadata and other things where you can decide if you want royalties or those kind of things or not. But that's really just giving an interface for like what's about to go into that smart contract when you mint your NFT. And so that's just like one very specific example. You know, and different industries, different purposes are going to have different ways of how this is. And if you could technically, if you're technical enough, you could figure out how to mint an NFT with a smart contract without this type of interface. But for a lot of people, and especially a lot of artists, aren't necessarily going to be doing this independently without a platform.
And then we have Anonymous here who is asking, as far as a music NFT, would I be investing in ownership of the music? I have no knowledge of this, so I just wanted to invest in a Jay-Z album. If it was an NFT, would I receive royalties?
Depending on how that contract. So a good example was truly Nas. Nas just did a release of his NFT with regard to a few songs. So anytime that song is played, those who hold the NFT get some royalties. So that's how it has to be based upon the contractual agreement. I think that's why the smart contract is really good to understand what you're buying into, because it's not just a contract where you just sign and say, okay, I get what I want. You get what the contract really specifies, and they will really tell you this is what you're getting as the holder of the NFT. That's why it's really important to do due diligence with regard to these projects, because just because everybody is on the hype train, you need to know what you're purchasing and for what purpose. Like, do you have to do anything other? And I see Issa says the same thing with data health is really important. And I would say patient data is something that I'm really that's my whole entire thing with the NFT. And that is you're carrying that information, but this is not like you're going to OpenSea. You're going to a very specific healthcare platform to mint that data. So again, it's pulling your records from whatever resources that are available. And this is specifically about Correlate Health. They will have a platform with regard to retrieving the information that you wish to send somewhere to your provider. And at that time, you can mint that NFT right there on that platform in order to send that to the provider that you need to. And again, with NFTs, the greatest part about it is not information that's held like in perpetuity, like you don't have this forever. So specifically like your healthcare data, you may want to visit a specialty doctor. This specialist can have your information for 48, 72 hours, so they can just diagnose you and do what they need to do. They don't need your record forever. They don't need it for 7 years. They just need it for that time frame. So what the NFT can actually do is say, you have this access for this amount of time. And then after that, I've resigned that it's no longer available to you. So these are the other aspects that, NFTs have a lot more power to them than just ownership of just this thing. This, it has the ability to actually maneuver this data. And I know we talk about slightly about AI, but that's logic. That's that logic layer in the Web3 kind of ecosystem that helps move these things along. Like, what are we doing with all of this data? Because data for data purposes really doesn't help you. It needs to be information. And more importantly, it needs to be valuable information for a specific time, for a specific person. So we need to make sure that when we incorporate all of these things, we're looking at it holistically. How do these all pieces work? Because this is the engine of a car. You have this one piece, but everything around it needs to actually work really in conjunction to make sure that everything gets to where it needs to be. And then again, this is where the compensation also automatically comes. This is everybody wants to know. So, what's in it for me? Your compensation is tied to giving the information and getting it to the right person.